What happens when you put good people in an evil place? Does humanity win over evil, or does evil triumph? These are some of the questions posed in this dramatic simulation of prison life conducted in 1971 at Stanford University. Welcome to Speedy Psychology. Today we'll be talking about the unfortunate and infamous Stanford prison experiment. Philip Zimbardo, the psychologist behind the experiment, wanted to test the psychological effects of perceived power, focusing on the struggle between prisoners and prison guards. The experiment was funded by the U.S. Office of Naval Research, who wanted to learn more about the relationship between guards and prisoners in the U.S. Navy. His research team put an ad out in the paper and recruited 24 college student males. These men came from diverse backgrounds but all had one thing in common. They were all mentally healthy and cleared by a psychiatrist. Before starting the experiment, Zimbardo asked the men whether they would rather be guards or prisoners. Although this had no effect on which role they were actually given, that was determined by coin toss, it gave some insight into what kind of person each participant was, and was particularly interesting because every single participant said they would rather be a prisoner. The experiment took place in a makeshift prison created at Stanford University. Each prisoner was taken from their home by police, handcuffed, read their Miranda rights, and driven to the prison to change into their prisoner uniform and assigned to a cell. The guards were given a uniform and shift times and were expected to go home when they weren't working. The first day was relatively uneventful, but by the second, prisoners had staged a revolt in their cells because of the guards' poor treatment. After only 36 hours, one of the prisoners began to lose his sanity, or so it appeared that way, and Zimbardo was forced to let him out of the experiment. As the days went on, the guards began to become more and more sadistic. They would force the prisoners to urinate and defecate in buckets in their cells, and as punishment wouldn't let them empty the buckets. Prisoners were forced to go naked to promote degradation, and oftentimes had their mattresses taken away and forced to sleep on the concrete. The experiment allowed for many of the young men to be abused and tortured, and would have gone on longer than 6 days if graduate student Christina Maslock, Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time and future wife, hadn't forced Zimbardo to put a stop to it. The experiment showcases the power of situational attribution over dispositional attribution, as the guards were behaving in sadistic ways because of the experiment and not because of their personalities. It also can be used to illustrate the cognitive dissonance theory and power of authority. That's all for this episode of Speedy Psychology. Make sure to tune in next week when we'll be tackling perception.